Hey there, my name is Ragnon, and this is my guide for Resto Druid in Season 3 of The War Within for Mythic Plus. I'm planning on maining Resto Druid again this season, and I'm really excited for how things are looking, specifically with Wildstalker and the new tier set. I think it's going to be a very competitive and strong option for both Mythic Plus and for Raid. Unfortunately for my ranged enjoyers, my Keeper of the Grove people, I'm not going to be recommending a Keeper of the Grove build this time around. I don't think it's going to be nearly as competitive, and I don't really want to be cited as somebody who is steering people that direction. So, unfortunately, I think that even more so than before, Wildstalker and Cat Weaving are going to be the way to go. The layout for this video, I am going to focus most of my time on talking about the spell rotation and casting priority and kind of your mental categorization for your spells and stuff. That's what excites me. I am going to briefly hit on gear and stuff, but most of my focus is going to be on the rotation. And I did make a chart that I'm going to be walking you through on how that looks. But before we do that, there are a couple things that I want to talk about. The first thing is the tier set. The new tier set for Wildstalker is based around Symbiotic Blooms, which are the unique heal to Wildstalker that are triggered by your FLO, your Wild Growth, and your Regrowths. And so the 2 set makes it so that you generate Symbiotic Blooms 30% more often, and then also when you cast Regrowth with Clearcasting, you're going to automatically cast 2 more Symbiotic Blooms on players. So this is going to create a lot more Symbiotic Blooms than before, which is pretty cool. Your 4-piece is going to make it so that your Symbiotic Blooms have a 20% chance to trigger Bursting Growth, which you can think of that as being the equivalent of Lifebloom's bloom when Lifebloom ends or is refreshed below 4.5 seconds. That's essentially what Bursting Growth is for Symbiotic Blooms. And so that's going to have a 20% chance to trigger at 80% effectiveness. And then each stack of Symbiotic Blooms on an ally increases that healing taken by 30%. Essentially, that's giving Symbiotic Blooms a kind of photosynthesis effect where it just randomly blooms. Very cool. Lots of good synergies. The Keeper tier set is not nearly as exciting. It makes it so that when you convoke, you're going to spawn a little Dryad that casts 1 Regrowth at double effectiveness and then cast a half power Tranquility. And then after that, your next 2 Swiftmends are amped up and they heal a lot more and they splash healing as well. I don't think this is good specifically for Mythic Plus because I've never had a moment where I was using a Convoke to heal and I thought, man, this is not enough. I wish I had a Tranquility going at the same time. That's more of a raid thing. Convoke is usually plenty when you're using it to heal in party. So that makes the Dryad kind of redundant. And I don't feel like the 4-piece with the Swiftmends is going to be nearly competitive enough to compare with Wildstalker. I'm going to quickly show the 2 builds that I'm recommending, and then I will do a deeper dive on these later after we talk about the spell rotation and stuff. Unlike last season, I'm not going to be doing as much of a scaffolded approach. Last season, I did a no damage build, and then I introduced a caster build, and then I introduced Cat Weaving as the final step. Instead, both of these builds are actually equally as viable. They just have a slightly different focus. This heal focus build is actually pulled from, you can see here, this is a build from Archon at the end of Season 2. This is what people were pushing 20s with. You can see the builds are almost exactly the same. The things that change are Wild Charge. Instead, I'm running Tiger Dash just because I am very used to having that, and I would feel incomplete without it. Abundance is no longer quite as synergistic, so we bring Cenarian Ward. And then this talent right here, which reduces the cooldowns on all of your other spells by 20 seconds when you channel Tranquility. I'm taking that out and instead putting it in Regenerative Heartwood. So that's my heal focus build. And this is going to focus mostly on healing. It does still bring Rake and Rip as options to apply your Bloodseeker Vines and stuff. And then this is my other talent build, which I'll probably be using as my default. At least I'm currently planning to. And this moves around some talents to bring Call of the Elder Druid, for the additional damage cooldown, and then it adds back in some cat stuff. So I'll talk more about all those later, but we're going to go ahead and dive into the fun stuff, which is the rotation. So this is a little, I don't know, priority matrix that I made earlier today to help group up mentally for you what you should be doing with all of your spells. So number 1 is most important. These are your maintenance spells, so you want to keep these active at all times. So your Efflorescence, you want to cast this on the ground, probably about where the tank is standing so that it can also hit the melee. But wherever it hits the most players, you want to have this up at all times. Your Life Blooms, you'll have 2 that you're able to cast because of your, what's it called, Undergrowth talent. So you'll have that on 2 different targets, and you want to be refreshing that whenever it's below 4.5 seconds. You don't have to wait for it to expire to have it bloom. You can refresh it during that pandemic window, and you will get the bloom. You can refresh it earlier, but you're going to be missing out on those blooms, and it's a little wasteful for mana. But sometimes you just have to. Cenarian Ward is a very efficient GCD. With 1 global, you put a very strong heal on a player that lasts for 32 seconds, and then as soon as they take damage, then it goes ahead and procs the heal. So you can actually have multiple of these out. You can have, I believe, 2 you can squeeze in. If the first one doesn't pop within those 32 seconds, you can cast a second one. So you just want to always be using this on cooldown, probably on the tank, but you could also like Life Bloom a DPS, Life Bloom a second DPS, and then throw down a Cenarian Ward on the 3rd DPS, and then your squishiest people in the group are all covered. Quick segue, Life Bloom. I get a lot of arguments and passionate comments about who to put Life Bloom on, and it's really not that complicated. I have people that tell me, don't ever put it on the tank, don't ever put it on yourself. It doesn't matter. So the rule is keep Life Bloom on whoever needs healing the most at that time. A lot of times that's the DPS. They have less tools to keep themselves alive than you and the tank do. A lot of times that's your pug tank that's not ever pushing Consecration and standing in it or using their shield blocks or whatever. And they're just not using their kit correctly and they need a lot of extra support. Sometimes that's going to be you and you have a big dot on yourself and you need some extra support. So just put it on whoever needs it most of the time. Don't get caught up on photosynthesis. This is what ties everybody up. Photosynthesis is this talent here that makes it so that when Life Bloom is on yourself, all of your heals tick 10% faster. And whenever it's on somebody else, they just get random blooms. This is not super important. I wouldn't overthink this. Instead, I recommend that you think of Life Bloom from its mastery perspective. Life Bloom counts for 3 stacks of mastery. So whoever has Life Bloom, in addition to a ton of other effects, they're going to be getting a lot extra healing from your mastery stacks. Which, before we continue on this, I'm going to go ahead and do a quick second tangent on mastery. I'm going to do my rant on mastery, because this is important to understand when it comes to how HOTS work for Druid. Druid, for better or worse, is not really... its strength really doesn't come from its HOTS. So your rejuves and your wild growths and stuff, those aren't actually in and of themselves what's causing the healing. Instead, you can think of it as each heal that you put on somebody provides a stack of mastery. Your healing is increased by a percentage for each of your heal over time's effects on that target. And it does have some diminishing returns. But just for some easy math, let's round this down to 30%. And so if I put 1 rejuve on myself, I now have 1 stack of mastery. That means that I am getting 30% extra healing from my heals. If I put a second rejuve on myself, I now have 2 stacks of mastery. I am receiving 60% increased healing from all of my different heals. So both of those heals are healing for more than they were when it was just by itself, more than the sum of its parts. If I added a regrowth, now I'm at 3 stacks. I'm having 90% extra mastery. I just got a symbiotic bloom, and now I'm up to 120%. Now, that's not accurate because there are diminishing returns. Your first couple HOTS are actually much more valuable than your last few. So like your first and second, for example, are going to provide a lot more of that mastery percentage than your 7th and 8th. But the concept is still the same. More hots is more better. Step 2, clearcasting. So clearcasting is randomly provided by your life blooms. When you have your life bloom on a target, the healing from it has a chance to provide these little leafy things on the side of your screen. That means that you have clearcasting. That will make your next make your next regrowth free, and it will also make it heal for more. This also has synergies with our tier set. Remember that it will be providing 2 extra symbiotic blooms, so you want to be casting these pretty much as soon as you see them. It can stack up to 2 times, but in reality, you're never gonna let that happen. You just need to cast it. So I'm just gonna be ripping these as soon as I see them. Step 3, Swiftmend is a nice healing amplification to your spells because of a talent right here called Full of the Forest. So what it does is after you cast Swiftmend, it's going to increase the healing of your next regrowth, rejuve, or wild growth by an amount. Your single target ones are 150%, and your wild growth is by 50%. So the way that this works is anytime your Swiftmend is off cooldown, you want to go ahead and use it. Yes, it is a powerful spot heal, but I recommend just sending it. You got other options. Just go ahead and send it, and then your choice on which follow-up spell depends on what you need. I believe last season I recommended pretty much always using it on wild growth. I have grown as a player, and I don't think that that's the option the best choice. Now, instead, I would primarily focus on sending it on regrowths for a spot heal. Whenever you can, that's a good use for it. If the whole party is taking damage, then yes, it is totally fine to use it on a wild growth for an increased even heal across the party. And then if you don't know what to spend it on, or if you have somebody that has a longer dot on them, or if you're preparing for a damage event or something, you can go ahead and send it on a rejuve. One other thing about your Swiftmend is whoever you cast it on, it will extend their hots, and that's from this Verdant Infusion talent here. So instead of consuming a hot like it normally did, it will extend the duration of all of your heal over time effects on that target by 8 seconds. That means, for example, let's say that I put Life Bloom and Cenarian Ward on myself and Rejuve. If I Swiftmend myself, look at these durations here. It adds 8 seconds to all of your heals. So that is going to bump up the duration on your Cenarian Ward, your Life Bloom, everything else. So typically you could send that on the tank because you're going to be supporting them with a lot of hots. But anybody who has a lot of valuable hots that you want to extend, that is also a perfectly great way to spend your Swiftmends. Step 4, healing is needed right now. Somebody is dying. You need to fulfill your role as a healer and keep them alive. What do you push? What are your go-to buttons when people are dying actively? Nature's Swiftness should be used as much as you possibly can. A lot of times mine is not available if I'm not running the 2-stack talent because mine is macroed in with my Convoke. If you don't know this interaction, you can macro these together. Nature's Swiftness makes your next regrowth free, and it increases its healing by, I think it's 200%. If you Nature's Swiftness before Convoke, it makes all of the regrowths that are cast by your Convoke also buffed up by that 200%. And it doesn't even consume the buff. So then after your Convoke's done, then you can go ahead and spend it on a regrowth. Very powerful combo, but if you have extra, you can just send it on regrowths as well. Regrowth is going to be your go-to spot heal. It's a pretty decent spot heal. It also provides a heal over time. So your follow-up regrowths on a target are there's some talents that are actually going to make it critical hit, and it's also going to increase the healing that they receive because of the mastery stacks and stuff. Grove Guardians are not nearly as important for Wildstalker. They don't provide a heal amp, and they have a lot less talents that do anything for them. But you can still use them specifically when you're in Cat, and because they don't take you out of form, and they can help support any healing that you're doing. Ironbark is one of the best, if not the best, external in the game. A lot of people think power pain suppression is, but it's got a pretty long cooldown. This is available every 1.5 1 minute and 10 seconds. And we're running Regenerative Heartwood. What this does is whoever has your Iron Bark is going to be receiving 75% of the healing from all of your active rejuves. That also counts the rejuves that are on that target. So that's a lot of healing if you have a lot of rejuves out that are all funneled into that one target. And it lasts for 16 seconds because of this talent. So it has a pretty good uptime. Try to use it frequently. I usually use it at the start of a pull when the tank is grouping things up and things are a little bit more awkward for them. That's usually when they need more support. Invoke is a very strong healing cooldown. You don't really need to do a whole lot of prep. You could just rip it and it will do well. But it will heal for more if you ramp going into it. What I mean by that is you want to have less of the casts turn into rejuves and wild growths, and more of the casts instead be regrowths. And the way that you do that is you prep the group with lots of rejuves and a wild growth, and then you convoke, and then more of your casts will be triggered as regrowths. So you can get some more healing value out of it by doing that. And Tranquility has been buffed up in Season 3. It is now a much stronger healing cooldown than it was before. It is stronger in a 5-man environment than last season. So this is a great button to push when you need healing across the whole group as well. Step 5. So this is if healing is coming up soon, maybe the next 10 to 15 seconds or something, or if you're unsure, if you're learning a dungeon, you don't know the damage patterns, you don't know what trash does and who's going to take damage when and what the boss abilities do, you can go ahead and do this heal prep stage as well. So to do the healing needed soon, you can start putting rejuves on people, and you can have up to 2 per player, and that's because of germination. If you already have all your rejuves out and you don't know what to push, then you can go ahead and start using regrowths, which the heal over time from this is not very strong, but it does give an extra stack of mastery, which is the main reason you would be doing it. So it's perfectly fine to be doing some regrowths then as a second step to prep the group. And then wild growth is important to push, but you want to push this as the damage is hitting. And that's because this is only a 7-second duration, and it's front-loaded, meaning that the healing that comes from it is higher in the first couple seconds, and then it falls off very quickly over time. So you want to push this as the damage is hitting, and then go into your active healing with regrowths and stuff. So that is how you prep the group. And then the very final stage, you notice this is step 6, not step 1. If no healing is needed, you're sure that there's no healing needed, and I put a little asterisk here. Don't be the doofus that's in cat form, tunneling on applying bleeds while your party dies. This is the biggest complaint that I hear about Pug, Resto Druids and stuff from my guildies, is that, you know, everybody's bleeding out and rotting out and stuff, and they look over and they're druids just in cat form trying to get a bigger number. It is fun to try to push your DPS up, and that's something that I really enjoy about Druid, is that it is an engaging and challenging playstyle to cat weave, and it's rewarding when you successfully weave between the two and contribute damage while not dropping the ball on the healing. And that is part of the skill ceiling of Resto Druid. It takes a lot of time and practice to get that decision-making process down. So I would recommend erring on the side of caution and sticking in this 5th step if you're ever unsure. But let's say you're free to DPS. What I would recommend is starting by raking as many targets as possible. That's going to trigger a lot of Bloodseeker Vines. Then anytime you hit 5 combo points, you want to make sure that you're ripping. And when the pack is grouped, you can go ahead and thrash. You can think of this as being your Sunfire, and this is your Moonfire. Just like on Moonkin, you'd wait for the group to be clumped up, and then you cast 1 Sunfire. Same deal with Thrash. You don't want to be spamming this. Your 4th step, after you've applied all these bleeds, then you can go ahead and Convoke. I recommend doing it after you do all your bleeds, because just like the defensive Convoke, you don't want this to be spending its spells on rakes and thrashes and stuff. Instead, you want it to be funneling its spells into high values abilities like shreds and ferocious bites. So if Convoke is not needed in the next minute for healing, then you can go ahead and pop it. And you would want to do that again after you apply your bleeds and then before your Heart of the Wild buff ends. So if you're running my second build here that I showed, my default build, all of the Elder Druid will proc on once every minute. And so you have 15 seconds with this buff. So what I would do is you'd start raking, it pops the buff, you keep applying your bleeds, and then in the last couple seconds, you make sure that you get your Convoke off before this buff expires. So Convoke is a 3-second cast. You need to start it before there's 3 seconds left of the buff. And then as a final step, usually this is only applicable on like boss fights and stuff. If all of your bleeds are applied, then you can go ahead and shred, and then at 5 combo points, you Ferocious Bite. But this is much less valuable than your bleeds, so you only do this as a last layer after all of your bleed stuff is done. That's healing priority. So a couple notes, a couple extra tips that I put. Again, you can extend your Cenarian Ward with your Swiftmend. You can't actually cast it on the Cenarian Ward. You have to have another spell like a Rejuve or a Regrowth to actually be able to cast Swiftmend. It doesn't work if they just have Lifebloom and Cenarian Ward, for example, but it will extend those hots. Practice easing back on Rejuves until you learn the dungeons. So when you first start, you might be stuck on this 5th step because you're terrified. You're not sure where the damage is going to happen. You're just constantly prepping the group and running out of mana because of that. As you start learning the dungeons and where the damage patterns are, you can start easing off all of those extra rejuves that you're casting. That will save mana, and it'll also give you time to replace that time with cat stuff. If you're unsure, always prioritize healing over DPS. Don't be that doofus that lets your party die while you're in cat form. And then we talked about the Lifebloom thing. Just put it on who needs it. So that is the spell priority. I'll go ahead and show you what that looks like in action. So when you start dungeon, you want to make sure that you're putting your symbiotic relationship on somebody. I honestly put it on the tank usually. That mentally helps me be more okay with putting my Lifeblooms on the DPS because I think, oh, they've got symbiotic relationship. They're fine. It doesn't do that much, but it helps me sleep at night. You want to make sure you have your Mark of the Wild on the group, obviously. And then when you go into a pull, I have to pull it because this is a follower dungeon, but when you go into a pull optimally, you'd be stealth because you get some extra bonuses from that, but I'm not going to be able to do that in this example. Let's go ahead and set up a bigger pull. So here, I'm setting up my most important priorities, which is the Lifebloom, F-Flow, and then I'm going to go ahead and do my DPS stuff. There's no healing that's needed. I'm at 5 combo points. I'm going to go ahead and Convoke now just because this is a follow dungeon. They're going to die soon. Let's say some healing's needed. I pop out. I can start spinning my Clearcasting stacks. My Lifeblooms have fallen off. I'm falling behind on stuff because I'm talking as I'm going, and my mouth is not as fast. But yeah, you just make sure you're keeping Lifeblooms up. Make sure you keep your F-Flow on the group. Consume your Clearcasting stacks as much as possible. It can be hard to keep up with sometimes. There's a lot of Clearcasting generation. And then if you want to focus on prepping your group for healing, then you can start lathering Rejuves. If you've got Rejuves on everybody, then you can start doing some Wild Growths. If the damage is about to happen, then you go ahead and Swiftmend into a Wild Growth, and then you're set up to start doing your Regrowths and whatnot. And then if you have time to DPS, then you go ahead and go cat form and watch your proc, your Heart of the Wild proc. Try to fit in your Convoke by the end of that. So, I'll just show you one more time since they happen to pull. Then Convoke. Notice that I have been greedy and I don't have my stuff out, so we're getting our Lifebloom, Cenarian Ward, and Eflo, and so on. These packs die so fast I can't talk fast enough to keep up with them, but I will be doing some healing out loud dungeons early in the season, and I'll explain my thought process as I go throughout that. Now, the nice thing about this build right here, this heal focus build, is that this still has tools to do damage. You still have the, like, I don't know, the key components to be able to do damage. It's just going to be less damage than it otherwise would be with this other build. But since you're not running Call of the Elder Druid, you are not tied to that duration to DPS. So you can more freely swap in and out of cat form as needed to heal and then do a little bit of DPS and then heal and do a little DPS. That can be overwhelming for newer players, but for people that are comfortable with cat weaving, it can be very freeing to have that option. With this build, your rejuves are going to last for longer. So you can see if I cast rejuve on myself, it should be a 17-second duration. But if you watch it, you can see since I'm full health, it's adding 2 seconds twice. So it actually ends up being, I believe, a 21-second duration. So that's going to make it much easier to ramp when the group is healthy because these are going to be lasting several seconds longer, which gives you time to keep them up, ready for a damage event. Okay, I'm going to talk about the logic of going from this build to what I'm considering my default build and why I made the changes that I made. I can't remember if I said this in a previous take or if I said that. I've tried this video a lot today. I kept getting interrupted by my daughters, and so this is like my 4th or 5th try. So I apologize if I already said this, but this is the build from like running +20s and stuff. It's very defensive. This build is almost the exact same. Just some small changes to update it for Season 3 and some personal changes. There are several talents that are redundant defensive talents that won't be sorely missed if they're taken out. So, for example, the very first one, well, first of all, you want to switch out these because that's the big catalyst for grabbing extra damage talents, is grabbing this Call of the Elder Druid, in my opinion. Then over here, the first talent that we can drop is Feline Swiftness. This increases your movement speed by 15%. This is not necessary. Resto Druid is already a very mobile healer. You don't need this, so we can take that out and instead grab like Grievous Wounds to increase our bleed damage. The next talent I would remove. Also, the reason I'm doing this step by step is because you could stop at any point between these builds. Any of these talent changes that I'm doing are viable options. So if you wanted to stop here and say, this is my build, that's totally fine. You could definitely do that. But I'm going to show you all of the steps that lead me to what I'm going to be calling my default build. Frenzied Regeneration. This is something that you can cast while you're in bear form. It will trigger Verdant Heart and stuff like that. This is not super necessary because bear plus bark skin is a super powerful defensive combo. You don't need the extra healing taken, in my opinion, from Verdant Heart because you're already going to be super tanky. You have, 235% extra stamina, and you have extra armor and stuff. Like it's going to be, 235% extra armor with bear form plus Ursine Vigor, and then 45% extra stamina than normal because of bear form plus Ursine Vigor. That plus the 30% DR of bark skin, you're chilling, and you can do that once every minute. And you can do bear form whenever you want. So provided that you're not too greedy to go into bear form, you are actually very tanky as a Resto Druid. So we don't need this. We can take this out and grab Thrash instead. And then Verdant Heart, same deal. We can take that out and instead we could grab our first stack of Killer Instinct. Now to grab the second stack of Killer Instinct to get that extra 3% physical damage, we can take it out of Natural Recovery. This gives you a flat 4% healing taken increase. But again, you have lots of other tools to heal yourself and to keep yourself healthy. A couple examples are like Harmonious Constitution increases your regrowth healing to yourself by 35%. You've got Forest Walk, which is also increasing your healing received, and so on. There's lots of things that you have going for yourself to keep yourself alive. So we can take this out and instead grab that second stack. And that's what brings us to my default build that I'm probably going to be running most of the time. Unless I'm lazy, then I might run heal focus build, or if I'm nervous and I'm learning dungeons and stuff, or pushing content into, new higher keys than I'm used to, and I want to make sure that the group doesn't die and I don't mess things up in cat form. I'll probably run this heal focus build as well. But for farming weekly vault keys and 12s and stuff, this default build is good. Okay, trying to think if there's anything else that I missed. I don't think so. So I will probably think of something right after I post it, but I'll add any corrections as we go throughout the season and any additional tips and stuff like that. I'll pin a comment and I'll keep that updated throughout the season. Also, if you have any questions or you have anything that you need help with, I'm a teacher in real life and I love channeling that into the game by doing these kind of videos and streams. That's why I do this. And so if you have any questions and stuff, feel free to hit me up in the comments and I'd be happy to help out in any way that I can. You can also check out my community Discord linked in the description and hit me up there. And I check that every day and I'm happy to answer questions there. Also in that community Discord, if you have UI questions or you want any of my stuff, I link all of my profiles and stuff there. I just run what works for me and then I share it so that if you want it and it works for you, awesome. Yeah. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful season 3. Happy resto druiding. And I will see you in the next one.